Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WPwatercooler, episode number 334. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about forcing updates on WordPress websites. Let's go around the room real quick and get everyone introduced. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that this particular episode of WPwatercooler is sponsored by ServerPress, makers of desktop server. You can go over to their website over at serverpress.com where you can learn about all the cool things that are happening with doing local WordPress web development. So feel free to go take a look at them over at
serverpress.com. Right now. Do it right now.
Right.
Oh wait,
now.
No, watch the show. Wait, watch the show first and then do it.
That's right.
All right. Let's see here, Manny. Tell us about yourself.
I am Manny. I'm based in Las Vegas, Nevada, as you can tell. I'm one of the co-organizers of WordCamp Vegas 2019. Next weekend at the Plaza Hotel. I think we only have about like 20 tickets left. So if you want to come, buy your ticket right now. Been doing WordPress since maybe 2010 and doing websites since 1993. I'm a web guy. I wear many hats, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Good to have you. How about you, Ross? Tell us about yourself.
Hey, guys. My name is Ross from DigiCal. I'm just Ross. There you see right here.
Just Ross.
Ross, yeah. And I'm actually from Whittier, and I design websites in that great, awesome application called WordPress and a lot of other things. I also co-host or co-manage, co-sponsor, something like that, with Jason, the Whittier meetup. We meet on the third Monday of every month right here in my office. And so come on down. We had a great speaker last month. It was great. So come on down. We need more people to come and support us.
Awesome. Good to have you on. Steve, how about you?
I am Steve Zengit. I am the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
Good to have you as always, Steve. It's been like 7 years now, dude. 7 freaking years.
What? What?
Yeah, it's been 7 years.
Year crisis now.
Cosper, how about you?
Hey everybody, Jason Cosper, aka Fat Millenweg. Happy to be here talking about WordPress again. Yet another week. Let's do it.
Awesome. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. I do this website as well as another website or another show called WP Blab. Feel free to go take a look at that over at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe, where you can subscribe.
Look at those
to this
fancy
site.
graphics.
I know, right?
That's fancy.
You can subscribe to us over on YouTube as well as all the other podcast places. So feel free to go do that. All right. So we had a recent announcement that on Make WordPress, where they were talking about hopefully wanting to really push WordPress updates out to WordPress sites. What do you guys think about that?
Good.
You think it's good?
Hell yeah, I think it's good. I think that the people who are running on these janky old versions, I mean, honestly, the folks who are still running on 3.7, I'm sure that there are, I don't want to say perfectly valid reasons because I think that's a total crock, but I think that they have convinced themselves that they have valid reasons for why they're still on 3.7. I think that pushing them up the chain is a good thing. It actually makes the number of patches that the WordPress core maintainers have to maintain. Right now, they're backporting security updates back to 3.7.
Wow.
To be able, I mean, that's something that they don't have to do, but still do.
But I'm running Kubrick. Is this going to be a problem?
Yes.
What?
I mean,
if I could chime in here, I've been to many of Steve's meetups in Huntington Beach, and he always talks about never do something .0, and I'm like, Steve's here. I know he's really against that. I don't know if he's changed his mind lately, but for all my customers, it's always automatic. It's always whatever the latest version is on both core and plugins. So sorry, Steve, but whatever comes out, it comes out, even .0s.
Way to call me out, man.
Dang,
no, I'm just kidding.
But there's an advantage. Steve has a point. No, .0 is pretty risky. But I've been doing this for many years, like Manny and you, all you guys. We've been doing this for many years. I never had a problem of any sites crashing, but I know that if it comes out, I know they come out like maybe after a couple days. You don't get them out. You don't get them on the first day, right? They kind of spread them out a little bit, don't they?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think my opinion is changing, right? Because the WordPress, the WordPress schedule, rollout schedule changed, right? So even the .x releases, which is what we're really talking about, right, are kind of incremental releases, right? So 5.1.0, 5.2.0, those are sort of incremental. I still wait for the .1 after that. So I won't do 5.2.0. I'll do 5.2.1, and so. But I'm not as nervous as I used to be. I was, obviously very nervous when 5.0 came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big upgrade. And so I think it's a case-by-case basis. It really depends on what the upgrade is, right? What the new features are and what it's going to break. I agree with everything that Casper's saying. I want everybody to be on the latest stuff, but you're talking about sites that are run by non-technical people, right? And so if you upgrade and something breaks, they may not know what to do and may not have the resources to fix it. So there is another side to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think
those aren't my clients, so I don't care about them.
Yeah, well, I think one important thing here is because
I'm joking.
Yeah, the whole discussion is because WordPress is updating directly to site owners. But in my opinion, this should be between the hosting companies and the site owners, not between WordPress. The hosting companies should be forcing this. Oh, hey, listen, you are using a deprecated, exploitable version of WordPress, and you need to update, because otherwise you're gonna affect all the other clients that are on the same box, on the same service. If it's a shared hosting, right? They're gonna take the resources from other websites. It's like, so that's why I think the community should push the hosting companies, especially the most well-known ones, right, to do this instead of doing directly.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. I think the smart hosting companies, I think the smart hosting companies give you the choice, right? So Liquid Web, for instance, gives you the choice. Do I want core updates automatically, and do I want plugin updates automatically, right? Wow. And I think that's where we have to draw the line, right? So some hosting companies will update everything for you, whether you want it or not, right? And when you start getting into plugins, I know we're talking about core, but we start getting into plugins, then you've got real problems, or you could have real problems. And automatically updating plugins is where you can really start crashing the site.
So see, we're talking. I'm sorry, Ross. We're talking about non-technical people who are the concern here, and my concern is non-technical people too. But my concern is the non-technical people who don't know that they need to log into their WordPress website and are running 3.7, 3.8, 3.9 because they haven't updated things. Not because they're scared of breaking something, but because they haven't updated things. And then the second, that the updates for these older versions of WordPress, I think they want to cap it at 4.7. So if someone's still on 4.4 and they don't get the update pushed to them, and they're just like, okay, well, we're only releasing security patches back to 4.7, then those people are left out in the dark, and they don't know because they're non-technical. I think that pushing these updates to people and actually getting them on something that will still get updates, will still be secure, I think ultimately is a good thing. And there's going to be so much wailing and gnashing of teeth about this, but I think ultimately you're going to have to drink the shitty medicine. You're going to have to basically have your dose and just kind of deal with it. And besides, a lot of us work with clients that aren't technical. This kind of sounds crappy, but it's going to be good for business. Like, we're going to have to guide people through this sort of thing. Like, I'm
Here's the issue there, though, right? And so I know we're probably talking about some edge cases, or maybe not. Maybe this is the majority. I don't know. I don't know the data on this. But here's the issue, right? So we're updating WordPress. If it was just vanilla WordPress with no plugins, not a problem, right? If it was vanilla WordPress using a theme from the WordPress team, that's not a problem, right? What we're really talking about, the real problem here is all of the third-party technology that's in there, right? And so there's some really, really crappy plugins that are out there that aren't updated well or do not follow best practices. And that's where themes the same way. That's where you have problems. The unfortunate part is all that technology, even though it's third-party stuff, it's not really the responsibility of the WordPress team. It all affects the WordPress brand. Right. And so when WordPress does an update and something goes wrong, somebody who's non-technical doesn't say, well, that's because of this plugin. They say WordPress is a problem. WordPress crashed. WordPress doesn't work. And I'm speaking from experience because the same thing happened in the Flash world and it happened in the Shockwave world. Right. And I know I'm dating myself, but it's happened so many times where it really is. It's not a technical issue. It's a branding issue. Right, because it's all the WordPress ecosystem. So when these things start to cause problems, and somebody who's non-technical has to go out and hire a developer, all of a sudden now WordPress is bad, WordPress is expensive, right? It's happening in the Magento world right now. Magento has a very bad rap right now because they made an upgrade from 1 to 2. It was a major upgrade, and there's no clear migration path. You can't just click a button and have Magento upgraded from 1 to 2. And from what I understand, the Magento upgrade, on average, is about a $50,000 project.
Wow.
I mean, the same thing happened with Joomla 1.5 hit. And to upgrade from previous versions of Joomla to 1.5, it wasn't. It was a migration. It wasn't just a click a button, make it happen.
Drupal had that same problem too.
Yes.
I think Drupal had the same problem too.
I was an old Joomla guy. On Joomla, you had to rebuild your site from 3.x to 4.x. You had to rebuild it. There was no upgrade path.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
I understand. I understand. I was speaking tangentially. I understand.
Right.
So this means that a lot of web hosts are going to have to deal with when sites get broken because, you know, when the web hosts, at least the web hosts that I've used in the past, will do a push of an update. They'll back up your website. They'll push out an update. They'll test to make sure your website's working. Then if it isn't working, they roll back to the previous, backup that they did. And then they tell you, hey, we tried to update your website. It didn't work out. Boom. That's it. So when WordPress itself is doing this, how does WordPress itself manage that? Like, how's that going to work? It's like a white screen detector. It needs to happen or something like that. I mean, it's not close enough to the metal there to be able to kind of manage that stuff, which is why I'm kind of with what Manny was saying, having those web hosts be the ones that do the push. At least they can kind of mitigate and manage, all of that sort of thing.
But by the time this timetable actually comes to play, if it does come to play, the smart hosts will have their people on at least 4.7. And then you're going to end up with, as Steve kind of said, the edge cases, the people who, either the smaller hosts who don't have the manpower to update everybody to 4.7, the hosts that are just like, okay, well, let's just see how this shakes out. Folks like that, that's what you're going to end up running into. But I don't think that a WP engine, I don't think that, even DreamHost or Bluehost or anybody like that is going to have anybody on something below 4.7 if they have a sort of at least a managed WordPress product. They might again still have those edge cases of like a cPanel one-click installer or something like that. But I really think that to save their support, they're going to have to push people up to at least 4.7.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know who just mentioned it, but visual testing tools I think are key here. Some sort of automated testing. Watch Cosper's talk from San Diego WordCamp a couple years back, right? He talks about exactly this. So having those kinds of things in place when you do an upgrade, just to go in and check your site, I think is important, right? But again, that's not coming from the WordPress team. That's coming from the host or the developer or you name it. It's a third-party resource.
Yeah. Well, especially you can't just go and do a test to see if you're getting a 200 or if you're getting a 500 or if you're getting a 404 or any of those sorts of things. Like you need to make sure that the rest of the site is working correctly. So if 80% of the page is jacked up, but it's still giving you everything's okay, then that's
Oh.
not a good thing, But if it comes down to where, just because the site, WordPress boots up, if you will, and is working correctly on the surface, that's not good enough, because that means that at some point that user is going to try to log into that website that they've essentially abandoned, and they're going to find that they can't even log in. And now it's yet another support, request that's going to have to come in to the web host.
But when the site inevitably gets hacked, they're not going to be able to log into the site.
That's true.
Yeah, one other good point that was brought up by John Brown on Facebook. He's saying about the terms, the terms and conditions for WordPress. It doesn't tell anything about major upgrades. Only like minor updates. Minor updates are like allowed in the terms. So I don't know, do they have to change the terms first, or they're gonna get sued? The heck out of them. If they do this, because that's another important issue too, right?
Yeah, I mean, the software is what's the software.
Nobody reads the terms.
Yeah.
You wait until they break the site.
I mean, Automatic's buying everything lately. They've got money to burn to throw at any sort of lawsuits. And that's, to be clear, for the pedants at home, I'm not saying that Automatic is WordPress. Please don't get it twisted. But yeah, no, I can see. Yeah, there might be some people who get irritated over the upgrades and try to level some sort of lawsuit. It's probably the same people that were really excited for Classic Press when Gutenberg got introduced, though. Like, let's be honest.
And again, that's really my earlier comment. That's what I'm worried about, right? Is that we may be talking about a handful, percentage-wise, we may be talking about a handful of edge cases here. But if those people are loud enough, right, it can affect the brand. That's really my concern.
Yeah.
It's gonna break some sites. Period. That's just what's gonna happen.
And I'm curious if Matt's gonna hop on stage and say, the website, the web's being hosted, or the web is whatever the percentage is of WordPress, that the web is running on. And by the way, 8% of those, 8% of those are actually now dead because we broke them by pushing out this update.
So we're down to 27-ish.
Right. Like, we may lose market share because an Apache error message is showing up, and now Apache is winning the war instead of WordPress.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about, and I love the fact that good web hosts would do this for you. They would just do it, and you're paying them to do it, and they're going to do a good job of doing it, and they're going to make sure it's done right. And when you have somebody even like Liquid Web, where they're doing the actual updates of the plugins, whoa, like that's even further down the road.
There's another kind of hidden problem here that you're not going to see, right? And so even the most experienced WordPress users, I'm not going to say developers, might not know that their site is actually bogging down a server, right? So they may be running an old plugin with a new version of WordPress that's causing a slow query somewhere, and on the surface the site looks fine because you've got Cloudflare in front of it, and my Google PageSpeed score is great, right? But it may be bogging down the whole server because of some slow query somewhere. We just encountered this with a site that we inherited, and it was just a plugin and a common plugin, and we're talking about an incompatibility, right?
Yeah.
So on the surface, it could appear that everything's fine.
Yeah. Which almost means that there needs to be a way for these people to even know that their site is slowing down, other than their customers complaining that it's not working. And
I think site health was a good step, kind of a good step toward visualizing that, right? It's for the common user, right? I think Query Monitor is a good tool that everybody should check out every now and then if they haven't done that. So.
Like during our recent meetup, Ross and I were talking to one of the gentlemen that showed up there, who he was explaining that a lot of his customers are now being told not to log into their own websites, or that they're given like a very basic login that they can get into and mess with, which for me, just like that drives me crazy. Like I know I don't want my customers to go in there and break their website, but they also own it. And they don't need to have like the kid glove mode on in order to be able to access it. But if they can't even do their own updates, that's not good.
Are they not? Well, I've got an opinion on that, but are they not admins on their own website?
From what he was saying, no, they weren't admins. They may have an admin account, but their default account that they log into is not an admin account.
Which is
think of it like as the Linux version of not logging in as root, but rather logging in as a user.
Yeah, and I'm kind of okay with that, right? I'm kind of okay with not showing like the plugin updates and theme updates, right? And we actually do that, and we let our clients know right up front. We actually turn that stuff off by default, and we do it because hitting that update button is cowboy coding, right? Right, because you are changing code on a live site, and so we always turn that off on production. Not that our clients don't own it, right? And they have all the code. We just don't allow them to accidentally break their own site.
Well, WordPress is going to do that. They're essentially going to cowboy code the whole world.
I know.
They're going to go like this.
Yeah, they're going to
go like this.
They're going to cowboy code 27 to 35% of the internet.
They're going to take your site to the Old Town Road, and they're going to ride.
Ross is ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm ready.
We should start, monetizing on this and doing SEO for this. Just waiting for the word to get on fire.
I'll throw a lower third down there. Here we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So, go for it, Jason.
I was going to say to their credit, a few years ago, they got a shout out during the State of the Word. Bluehost updated. It was somewhere on the scale of like 1.6 million out of date sites to the latest version at the time of WordPress, and they actually released their tools on GitHub for like how they did it. So hosts out there, even smaller scale hosts, like there are plenty of hosts that already have like their methods for doing this, but like smaller scale, like DIY hosters and stuff like that should maybe look at these tools before these upgrades inevitably, I mean, as long as the community goes for it, come along. Like you can actually get your people up on something. It runs the upgrade, it does a backup, it makes sure that everything is okay before like kind of finally saying like, all right, cool, let's move on to the next site. So I rarely have nice things to say about the less expensive hosts, but Bluehost really did a mitzvah for the WordPress community by putting that up and on GitHub.
There are mentions over there at Bluehost. I'm sorry, I thought we moved into the Yiddish portion of the.
I have to quickly Google words to contribute. No, that's cool. So that tool that they were using, they called it WP Tools.
Yeah, it's kind of a generic name, but it is incredibly useful. It's seen updates as recently as last year. A lot of it is just hitting the update button and running a backup. So it's not too complicated, but it's still getting pretty routine updates as far as I'm aware.
Nice. Very cool.
I mean, look, here's the kind of the bottom line. If you keep your site up to date, this isn't going to affect you, right? It's just not going to matter, right? And so, I mean, I don't worry about these things because all of my sites and all my client sites are at least up to date to the most recent version or the most recent stable version, right? This is really just to get the old jank out of there.
Jank
so many tab-log sites are going to break.
Jank is a technical term that we use at Zeek very often.
I'd like to add one little comment with your web host and all that. I get some new customers all the time. One of the things I'm seeing their website may be up to date, but their PHP is really old. Some of them are still on 5.0, whatever. You may know what the PHP is. My recommendation is go to your web host and see what PHP version they have. Sometimes some web hosts, they can just press a button to go from 5 something to 7. You want to go to 7 something, whatever it is now, 7.3, I think. 7.3 is pretty much designed, I'm gonna say for WordPress, but WordPress is in 7.3 make your site a lot faster. Make sure the PHP is up to date as well. So, and that'll so those two, when we say deprecation, all that kind of stuff, some of that's because of the PHP, right?
Agreed. Yeah, good point. And again, if you have the health check plugin, is it a plugin or just built in now? If you have health check, it'll tell you all the stuff.
It's a built-in, but that is not in
4.7 or.
And if you don't have it, that might be a good indication to do an update, and then you may want to become friends with a WordPress person when all of your plugins start breaking because the whole site's jacked up.
From the stats here, the WordPress.org looks like we have about 10% of the WordPress sites are below 4.7, right? It's still a big number, right?
That is a big number.
Is that built with? Is that built with?
No, WordPress.org. I just posted. Yeah. So, and PHP versions, yes, a bunch of people are still on, below 5.5. Maybe 50%.
Wow. Mm. Yeah, I mean that drops us down tremendously if you knock out 10% of, let's say that's 10% of them haven't been updated, and let's say that 3% of them, of that 10%, stop working. I mean, market share, you're essentially going to drop that market share value down quite a bit until people actually get their sites up and running again.
Yeah.
Right? I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Huh. Let's look at. I mean, there was just a story that came out today. It was a little sensationalist in Wired about sites that were using old exploits for iPhones to allow state actors to effectively hack iPhones for surveillance purposes, etc. And it's because people weren't on the latest, most up-to-date, most secure version of iOS for their phone. The fact that we have these things that it's as long as you stay up to date. If you look at the pattern of the people who are on the more recent versions of iOS versus the people who are on the more recent versions of Android, it's staggering how many people are on these old ass versions of Android. Years, even 5-6 year old versions of Android. That's rough. To be on a version of when did 3.7 come out? Does anyone know that off the top of their head?
Ooh, no.
A quick Google. Who's going to be first? I see Jason furiously typing at his keyboard.
Cowboy.
I am.
I don't know. I don't know how to use Google.
That came out. No, that's not
2013.
Right. Yeah. This thing says April 3rd of 2018.
October 24th, 2013.
13, yeah.
Okay, 13. Okay, so what? Almost 6 years old?
Yeah.
For 3.7?
3.7.
Yeah, so they're running on an old version of Android. Basically for their site. I feel like we, and I'm sure that there are people who disagree, that we owe it to the people we owe it to the edge cases to make them not an edge case anymore. We owe it to plan for these people who are edge cases to try to make that process as seamless as possible.
Yeah. I don't know. Every time I've logged into an old site where it still says links over on the left-hand side or blog roll or something like that, I die. A little bit of me dies inside, and I go, "Why did you guys never update this?" And they're like, "I'm scared to update." I'm like, well, why are you scared to update? Oh, I bought this plugin and I didn't renew it, and now I'm not. I'm not gonna want to update it, and I'm scared. Because they're not thinking about the security part of it. They're thinking about what happens when I push this update button, and I'm scared to push update. And now WordPress is going to push update, and now we got to figure out what's going to happen with that.
Well, okay, so you're not on. I know we only have about a minute left. You're not on a new version of WordPress. There is Natalie McLeese and Nathan Tyler for Plugin-a-Palooza a couple years ago made a plugin called Plugin Detective that helps you troubleshoot like what plugin is effectively breaking your site. So if you're really nervous about, and if I recall correctly, it works even if your site is white screened or is kind of in a less than optimal state. So if you're worried about updating your site to something newer, this plugin can absolutely help you kind of like push up and see what's wrong and what might break when you hit that upgrade button.
Yeah, that's a good one to have. And let's wrap up the show.
Yeah,
Casper, thank you for that. That was a plugin that I've used a few times, and it's been working really well for those particular incidences. So thank you very much for all you folks for coming on the show and hanging out with us. I really appreciate it. You can go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe, where you can learn how to subscribe to this content. We'd really appreciate it. Links of all this stuff are in the show notes. You'll be able to take a look at those. We'll make sure that those go up on the website. And that's about it. I want to say thank you very much for all of you for watching us and hanging out with us on the live streams. Talk to y'all later. You have a good one. Bye-bye.